Now, if we take a look at the history of the Star Wars franchise that was actually led by Kathleen Kennedy throughout the sequel trilogy films, Solo, Rogue One, Boba Fett, and Kenobi, before her creative control was pretty much diminished almost down to zero, there's been a lot of division ever since then between the Star Wars fans and exactly what's happening with the franchise at large between Bob Iger, the Disney higher-ups, and more. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now that brings us to the main subject of what's really going on with Kathleen Kennedy and specifically her views on Gina Carano based on what she recently had to say about Cara Dune, Gina Carano as an actress, the whole firing situation, and a whole lot more to the overall dynamic of that. Now, when you look at everything related to Kathleen Kennedy, she's done nothing but divide the fans, and in the most terrible way at that. You know, we saw what she allowed to happen with The Last Jedi, we saw what she did with The Rise of Skywalker by excluding so many scenes that George Lucas advised and helped out with J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio for. And now that brings us to where we stand today. Thankfully, John and Dave have pretty much control over the majority of Star Wars moving ahead, and Kennedy only has control over Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte. However, that brings us to what Kathleen Kennedy recently had to say about Gina Carano and the character of Cara Dune in the Mandoverse, and what it really means. So, Kathleen Kennedy has had this problem, personally speaking, with Gina Carano for a very long time, even before she was fired. And there was a lot of different things happening behind closed doors. However, with Kathleen Kennedy struggling with both the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, more reshoots are on the way for Skeleton Crew as a series involving something substantial for the franchise. Kennedy recently ran into lots of trouble after presenting a plan to Lucasfilm and Disney for more reshoots for the Acolyte as well. However, in a recent interview that Kathleen Kennedy took part in, she went on to respond to the whole Gina Carano situation by stating the following to the community. I stand by my decision that the choice that I made for letting go of Gina was a necessity to keep the community free of toxicity in the fandom. I'm proud of the decision that I made, and I am hoping that we could get some kind of recast over the character she portrayed. I don't support people like Gina Carano, who has said absolutely terrible things on social media before in the past. It would be best for us to recast her if we can make that happen, so we can continue the story of Cara Dune accordingly. So let me just stop here for one moment. Now, we already know that John and Dave have a fleshed out plan to bring her back for Mando Season 4. Countless storyboards have been created for Cara Dune to return in Gina Carano's design. So the recast is only a conversation that's happening behind the scenes over at Disney. It's not that Gina is getting recast. It's just a conversation that's happening between Kathleen Kennedy, the Disney higher-ups, and how Kennedy is demanding this to happen, and the higher-ups do not want this to happen. And they're not letting it happen because they know a recast would be so damaging to the brand, and especially to the fans of Gina and the character of Cara Dune. Not only that, it would really kind of create a continuity issue if you have a totally different actress portraying the character. I know they did it with a lot of other characters in, for example, the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Rhodes in between Iron Man and Iron Man 2, I understand that. But for something smaller scale like The Mandalorian, it would kind of be distracting, in my point of view. Now, moving on to the next thing. Now, we've known for a couple of years now that Kathleen Kennedy has had so many different issues with Gina. She even had a lot of creatives that tried to get her fired on and on again. Even Gina admitted to this, that there were a lot of Lucasfilm creatives, quote-unquote, that were very loyal to Kathleen Kennedy, looking for any kind of flaw that they could use to get Gina Carano fired. And that just goes to show you that Gina Carano, really was in a terrible place at that time when it came to Lucasfilm's environment, because you had so many loyals of Kathleen Kennedy just trying to hunt her down and get her fired for the most petty reasons, right? But I digress. That moves on to the next thing here, is that Kennedy goes on to state, though we do have John and Dave who fully support Gina's return, I do not at that end of the conversation. Gina is and always will be an awful influence on Lucasfilm and our image of the Star Wars brand, and I believe that I made the best decision for freeing this community from becoming more divided and toxic. People like Gina don't change, and we need those here at Lucasfilm that are more empathetic toward others and groups of people. I believe a recast of her character is a must right now. However, others don't agree with my opinion on that. Now, again, she's putting Gina on the spot, saying that Gina is a person that does not support specific groups of people, is kind of really stretching things out and going way too far at this point. Because when you look at stuff like that, it seems like Kathleen Kennedy just cannot let things go. When you have John and Dave doing amazing work with the Mandoverse, it almost comes off like she's very jealous over the fact that John and Dave's plan to get Gina back is moving along very well right now so far. It's really all up to Gina now, at this point. It's all up to Gina Carano. So, they have everything in the cards. The Disney board wants Gina back. They want Cara Dune back. John and Dave have a fleshed out story to bring her back from Mando 4. It's all dependent on Gina. Will she come back on her own terms, or will she stand away from the franchise? You could look at it two ways. If she comes back, the debate would be, well, she's not respecting herself as a person then because of how she was treated. On the other end of the spectrum, people could say if she comes back, then she is respecting the fans by coming back and taking up that role again. The other end of the conversation, if she does not come back, some fans will really respect her not coming back. Other fans will be very upset about her not returning on her own terms. So there's a lot of different opinions that are going to arise based on Gina Carano's decision on Mandalorian Season 4 and what she wants to do with the character of Cara Dune. Now, I'm very, very optimistic that John and Dave know what they're doing, that they have a fleshed out story that's going to make a lot of sense, that will fit the character of Cara Dune very well. And so it's all a matter of time, because she has up until around April to decide on whether or not she really wants to come back, based on John and Dave's pitch for the return of Cara Dune. So stay tuned, because we're going to be covering this month by month. It's going to be a very interesting development, and a lot of things are happening with that. So obviously Kathleen Kennedy has a big problem. A very big problem with Gina potentially coming back. She sounds threatened that John and Dave's plan are moving along well. Anyways, guys, let me know what you guys have to say about all of this below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon we hear them moans again.